pointed a thick finger, his voice booming across the quiet park. "Hey you, what do you think you're doing here?" The words sliced through the afternoon calm, drawing the attention of scattered park-goers. Officer Miller, badge number 734, clearly visible on his chest, stood with his hand resting on his service weapon, his stance aggressive, his gaze fixed on the woman sitting peacefully on a bench. "Excuse me," she replied, her voice calm but firm, not rising to meet his volume. She was a black woman, elegantly dressed but clearly comfortable, reading a book under the shade of an old oak tree. Her name was Anya Sharma, a name that carried weight in the city's legal circles, though Miller clearly didn't recognize it. "You heard me," he barked, stepping closer. "This area is restricted. You need to move along, now." Anya slowly closed her book, placing a bookmark carefully. She met his eyes, a cool, assessing look that seemed to disarm him for a split second before his bluster returned. "Restricted, officer. There are no signs indicating this area is restricted. I'm simply reading a book." "Don't play dumb with me," Miller sneered. "I said move. This isn't a place for loitering." His implication hung heavy in the air, the unspoken prejudice, the assumption of wrongdoing based solely on her presence. Anya felt a familiar cold anger begin to simmer beneath her calm exterior. This wasn't the first time she'd faced such blatant disrespect, such unwarranted suspicion. But today felt different. Today she wasn't just Anya Sharma, a woman trying to enjoy a peaceful afternoon. Today she was Anya Sharma, Assistant District Attorney for the city. She took a deep breath, the scent of freshly cut grass filling her lungs. She looked around the park, noting the families, the couples, the elderly walking dogs, all seemingly unbothered, none being harassed. Why her? The answer was painfully obvious. Miller took another step, his shadow falling over her. "Last chance, lady. Get up, or I'll have to escort you out." Anya finally rose, standing to her full height. She wasn't imposing, but she carried herself with quiet authority that seemed to confuse the officer. She didn't reach for a photo, as the initial hook suggested, but something far more potent. She reached into her bag and slowly, deliberately, pulled out a small leather wallet. She flipped it open, revealing a gold badge and an identification card. She held it up, ensuring he had a clear view. "Officer," she said, her voice now carrying an steel edge. "My name is Anya Sharma. I am an assistant district attorney with the district attorney's office, and I was enjoying my lunch break in a public park." Miller's face went slack. The bluster drained away, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief, then something akin to panic. The aggressive posture wilted. The hand moved away from his weapon. The man who had been yelling moments ago was now visibly sweating. This encounter, seemingly minor, was far more than just a bad day in the park. It was a stark reminder of the systemic issues Anya fought against every day in the courtroom. It was a personal insult, a public humiliation, and a catalyst. This incident would set off a chain of events, pulling back the curtain on more than just one officer's prejudice. It would reveal connections, expose corruption, and force Anya to confront the very system she worked within. The path ahead was fraught with danger, both professional and personal. Could one woman's quiet defiance in a park truly challenge the entrenched power structures of a city? And what price would she pay for seeking justice, or perhaps something more akin to vengeance? If you're enjoying this story so far, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. The silence that followed Anya's revelations stretched, thick with unspoken tension. Officer Miller stammered, An ADA? I didn't know. I just thought." "You thought what, officer?" Anya prompted, her gaze unwavering. "You thought a black woman sitting alone in a park on a weekday afternoon must be loitering? You thought I had no right to be here?" Miller shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting around as if seeking an escape route or a witness who hadn't seen his abrupt change in demeanor. "No, ma'am, I just patrol, keeping the park safe." "As safe from whom, officer? From me?" Anya's voice was quiet, but it resonated with controlled fury. She knew his type, the kind who hid behind the badge, using authority to bully and intimidate those they deemed lesser. This wasn't about safety. It was about control, about prejudice. Anya had grown up in this city, seen its complexities, its beauty, and its deep-seated inequalities. Her path to becoming an assistant district attorney wasn't easy. She'd worked tirelessly, driven by a desire to see justice served, especially for those whose voices were often ignored. She'd put away violent criminals, fought for victims' rights, and navigated the intricate, often frustrating labyrinth of the legal system. But moments like this, stark and personal, reminded her how much work was left to be done, even within the institutions meant to uphold the law. She thought of her grandmother, a woman who had faced far worse indignities with grace and resilience. She thought of the countless stories she'd heard, the subtle and not so subtle ways prejudice manifested in daily life. This wasn't just about Officer Miller. It was about a pattern, a culture. Miller, meanwhile, was calculating. An ADA. This could be trouble, serious trouble. He had a history, minor complaints mostly, but nothing that had stuck. Getting on the bad side of a prosecutor could be career suicide. He needed to de-escalate, fast. "Look, Ms. Sharma," he said, trying for a conciliatory tone that didn't quite mask his fear. "I apologize if I was overly assertive. Just doing my job." "Your job is to protect and serve, officer," Anya stated flatly, "not to harass citizens based on your assumptions." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "I'll be filing a formal complaint about this interaction." Miller paled further. "A complaint? Ma'am, please, let's not escalate this. It was a misunderstanding." "Was it?" Anya challenged, raising an eyebrow. "Because it felt very clear to me." She noted his badge number again, committing it to memory. She also noticed a patrol car parked discreetly near the park entrance, a younger officer inside who seemed to be pointedly looking away. Was Miller acting alone, or was this part of a larger pattern within his precinct? Anya didn't press the issue further in the park. She had what she needed: the officer's identity, the context of the interaction, and the burning conviction that this could not stand. She gathered her book and her belongings, her movements slow and deliberate, maintaining her composure even as her mind raced with possibilities. As she walked away, leaving a shaken Officer Miller standing by the bench, she knew this was just the beginning. This wasn't just about getting an officer reprimanded. This felt personal, and Anya Sharma, the assistant district attorney, was about to turn a personal slight into a professional crusade. The emotional weight of the encounter fueled her resolve. The injustice she felt wasn't just her own. It was a reflection of the daily struggles faced by many in her community. This fight was bigger than her. Filing the formal complaint was straightforward, but immediately met with friction. Anya submitted her detailed account to the Internal Affairs Bureau, IAB, of the city's police department. She included the date, time, location, Officer Miller's badge number, and a precise description of his behavior and dialogue. The initial response was polite but non-committal, a standard confirmation that her complaint had been received and would be investigated. However, the subtle pushback began almost immediately. Her contact at IAB, a Sergeant Evans, seemed hesitant, asking questions that felt designed to downplay the incident. "Are you sure he used those exact words, Ms. Sharma? Could there have been a misunderstanding of the park's regulations? Perhaps the officer was having a difficult day?" Anya pushed back firmly, reiterating the facts and emphasizing the clear discriminatory nature of Miller's actions. She also reached out to a trusted colleague in the DA's office, Mark Jenkins, a seasoned prosecutor known for his integrity and sharp legal mind. She recounted the incident and the initial lukewarm response from IAB. Mark listened intently, his expression growing serious. "That sounds like Miller," he said finally. "He's got a reputation, mostly whispers, but nothing concrete has ever stuck. Seems like IAB tends to look the other way when it comes to him." This confirmed Anya's suspicion that Miller wasn't just a lone bad apple, but potentially part of a larger issue within the department or his precinct. The conflict was escalating from a personal complaint to a potential investigation into systemic bias and misconduct. Anya decided to dig deeper. Using her resources as an ADA, she began discreetly looking into Officer Miller's record. It wasn't easy. Access to internal police records was restricted, but she knew people. She found a pattern of minor disciplinary actions, excessive force complaints that were dismissed, civilian complaints that went nowhere, a few traffic stops that seemed questionable. Nothing that screamed corrupt, but enough to paint a picture of an officer who frequently operated on the edge of acceptable conduct, often targeting minority individuals. Her investigation wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Each dismissed complaint, each ignored accusation, felt like a validation of Miller's behavior, and a dismissal of the experiences of those he harassed. The emotional toll was significant. She found herself replaying the park incident, the feeling of being targeted, the cold fear mixed with righteous anger. This fueled her determination, hardening her resolve to see this through, not just for herself, but for everyone who didn't have the power or position she did. The conflict intensified when Anya received a thinly veiled warning. An anonymous source, someone who claimed to work within the police department and had seen her complaint, contacted her indirectly. The message was simple: drop it. Miller is connected. You'll regret making waves. This wasn't just about a park incident anymore. This was about power, influence, and the potential for retaliation. Anya knew that pursuing this could put her career, perhaps even her safety, at risk. But backing down felt like a betrayal of her principles and a victory for the kind of behavior she detested. She discussed the anonymous warning with Mark. He was concerned but supportive. Be careful, Anya. If he's connected, this could get messy. But if you think there's something real here, something bigger than just him, then maybe it's worth the fight. The conflict had now broadened significantly. It wasn't just Anya versus Officer Miller. It was Anya versus a potentially entrenched system of protection and cover-up within the police department. Her pursuit of justice for a seemingly minor incident in a park had opened a door to something far more complex and dangerous. The emotional stakes were higher than ever. Anya's pursuit of justice wasn't confined to the official complaint. The anonymous warning had rattled her, but also solidified her resolve. She knew she couldn't tackle this head-on through official channels alone, not if Miller was truly connected. She needed to build a case, gather leverage, and understand the network protecting him. This led her down several parallel paths, weaving sub-traumas into the main narrative. One subplot involved her relationship with Mark Jenkins. Their professional collaboration deepened as they strategized how to navigate the internal politics of the DA's office and the police department. Mark, initially cautious, became increasingly invested as Anya uncovered more troubling details about Miller's past and the apparent reluctance of IAB to seriously investigate him. Their late-night phone calls and hurried coffee meetings weren't just about legal strategy. They were about mutual support, a shared sense of frustration with the system, and the growing risk they were both taking. Mark used his contacts to subtly probe within the police force, picking up snippets of gossip and rumors about Miller and his associates, information that wouldn't hold up in court, but helped paint a clearer picture of the landscape Anya was navigating. This subplot added a layer of camaraderie and intellectual sparring, highlighting the challenges of fighting internal corruption. Another significant subplot emerged when Anya decided to reach out to community leaders. She connected with Reverend Elijah Vance, a respected figure known for his activism against police brutality and racial profiling. Anya shared her experience, not just as an ADA, but as a black woman who had been targeted. Reverend Vance listened with a heavy heart, recognizing the all-too-familiar pattern. He agreed to help discreetly, leveraging his community network to gather anecdotal evidence, stories from people who had similar negative encounters with Officer Miller or his colleagues, incidents that were never reported or were dismissed. This subplot brought in the community's perspective, showing the real-world impact of the issues Anya was fighting. It also added a sense of urgency, as each new story fueled Anya's determination and reminded her of the broader implications of her fight. Time became a critical factor. The IAB investigation, predictably, was moving at a glacial pace. Anya knew that the longer it dragged on, the easier it would be for the department to bury her complaint, or for Miller and his allies to build a counter-narrative. She felt the pressure mounting, the need to uncover concrete evidence before the official channels closed ranks completely. This time pressure manifested in late nights, poring over documents, missed social events, and a constant feeling of being one step behind. Anya also faced subtle pressure within the DA's office. Her boss, District Attorney Thompson, a politically savvy but risk-averse figure, expressed concern about her personal crusade, suggesting it could be a distraction from her official duties. This created an internal conflict for Anya, balancing her professional responsibilities with her personal mission, and the fear that pushing too hard could jeopardize her career. This subplot highlighted the institutional resistance she faced, even from within her own office. These interconnected sub-traumas, the strategic alliance with Mark, the community outreach with Reverend Vance, The ticking clock of the IAB investigation and the internal pressure from her boss added layers of complexity to Anya's fight. They weren't mere distractions. They were essential threads in the fabric of her narrative, each contributing to the mounting tension and revealing different facets of the systemic challenges she faced. They showed that her fight wasn't just a legal battle, but a social and political one as well, requiring her to navigate multiple fronts simultaneously. The turning point arrived not through official channels, but through the network Anya had been building. Reverend Vance contacted her with a lead. One of his parishioners, a young man named Jamal, had been arrested by Officer Miller several months prior on what Jamal insisted were trumped-up charges. The case was eventually dismissed due to lack of evidence, but Jamal had lost his job and faced significant legal fees. More importantly, Jamal had captured a short video clip on his phone during the arrest. He had been hesitant to share it, fearing retaliation, but after hearing about Anya's situation and Reverend Vance's involvement, he decided to come forward. The video was shaky and short, filmed discreetly from Jamal's pocket. It showed Officer Miller and another officer, whose face wasn't clearly visible, roughly handling Jamal. The audio was muffled, but snippets of dialogue were discernible. Miller could be heard saying something about teaching him a lesson and a reference to cleaning up the streets, followed by a racial slur. The other officer didn't participate in the verbal abuse, but didn't intervene either. This video was the concrete evidence Anya desperately needed. It wasn't just Miller's word against a citizen's, it was a visual and auditory record of his misconduct and discriminatory language. This wasn't just about loitering in a park, it was about a pattern of behavior, abuse of power, and racial bias. Anya watched the video multiple times, her stomach twisting with a mixture of anger and grim satisfaction. This was it. This was the proof that could potentially break through the wall of silence and protection surrounding Miller. She immediately shared the video with Mark. He was equally stunned and recognized its significance. "This changes everything, Anya," he said, his voice low. "This isn't just a complaint anymore. This is evidence of a crime, assault, potentially civil rights violations. And that slur, that's motive." The video also provided a crucial piece of information related to the connections Anya had been warned about. While the second officer's face wasn't clear, a distinctive tattoo on his forearm was visible in one frame. Mark, through his discreet inquiries, had heard whispers about a small, unofficial group of officers within Miller's precinct who were known for their aggressive tactics and loyalty to each other. One of the names associated with this group was Officer Dave Riley, who was rumored to have a specific, easily identifiable tattoo. Anya and Mark cross-referenced the tattoo in the video with descriptions they had heard. The match wasn't definitive, but it was a strong lead. If the second officer was indeed Riley, it suggested that Miller's misconduct wasn't an isolated incident, but potentially part of a pattern involving other officers. This elevated the conflict from a single officer's behavior to a potential issue of a rogue element within the police force. The turning point wasn't just the discovery of the video, it was the realization of its implications. It provided undeniable proof of Miller's character and actions, and it opened up the possibility of exposing a wider network of misconduct. Anya knew that presenting this video would provoke a strong reaction, potentially from Miller, Riley, and whoever was protecting them. The stakes had just been raised exponentially. Her emotional reaction was a surge of adrenaline, mixed with a cold, calculated determination. Fear was present, but it was overshadowed by the powerful sense of finally having the leverage she needed. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Jamal, about Reverend Vance's community, and about every person who had suffered similar injustices in silence. Parte 6. Consequences and reactions. Aproximadamente 700 palabras. Presenting the video to IAB had immediate and dramatic consequences. Sergeant Evans, the hesitant IAB contact, suddenly became much more responsive, though his demeanor remained cautious. The video was undeniable. It was hard evidence that couldn't be easily dismissed as a misunderstanding. However, the reaction from within the police department was swift and multifaceted. Officer Miller was immediately placed on administrative leave, a standard procedure during an internal investigation involving serious allegations. But the reaction from his colleagues was mixed. Some officers, those who privately disapproved of Miller's behavior, kept their distance. Others, particularly those suspected of being part of his informal group, showed open hostility towards Anya. She received glares in the courthouse hallways and felt an increased sense of being watched. The anonymous warnings intensified, becoming more direct and threatening. One message, left on her car windshield, simply read, "Some things are better left buried for your own good." The potential identification of Officer Riley in the video added another layer of complexity. IAB began investigating Riley as well, which sent ripples through his network within the force. This wasn't just about Miller anymore. It was about a potential group of officers operating outside the law. Within the DA's office, the reactions were also varied. District Attorney Thompson, seeing the undeniable evidence and the potential for a public scandal, shifted his stance from cautious concern to damage control. He publicly supported Anya's investigation, emphasizing the DA's commitment to justice and accountability. But privately, he urged her to keep a tight lid on information and avoid anything that could embarrass his office or the city. This created a new dynamic. Anya was now officially supported, but also under increased scrutiny and pressure to manage the situation carefully. Mark Jenkins became even more crucial. He helped Anya navigate the internal politics, providing strategic advice and acting as a buffer between her and the more politically motivated elements within the DA's office. Their collaboration solidified into a genuine partnership, built on trust and a shared commitment to seeing justice done. Reverend Vance and the community reacted with a mix of vindication and renewed hope. The video validated their long-held concerns about police misconduct. Jamal, initially fearful, felt a sense of empowerment knowing that his video could make a difference. The community's support for Anya grew, providing her with a crucial external source of strength and validation. This consequence highlighted the impact of Anya's actions beyond the legal system, reaching into the lives of ordinary citizens. However, the consequences weren't just professional and public, they were deeply personal. The threats, the feeling of being targeted, the constant pressure, all of it took a toll on Anya. She found it harder to relax, constantly looking over her shoulder. Her focus narrowed, her personal life taking a back seat to the all-consuming nature of the investigation. This consequence showed the significant personal cost of her fight, highlighting the sacrifices she was making. The turning point had set in motion a chain of events that had fundamentally altered the landscape of Anya's professional and personal life, escalating the conflict and forcing her to confront the very real dangers of challenging entrenched power. The investigation intensified, and Anya found herself facing direct confrontations and significant obstacles designed to impede her progress. The most immediate challenge came from the police department itself. While IAB was now officially investigating, the process was riddled with delays and bureaucratic hurdles. Requests for personnel files were met with excuses, interview schedules were constantly shifted, and key witnesses seemed to become conveniently unavailable. It was clear that there was a concerted effort to slow down or derail the investigation from within. Anya, however, refused to be deterred. Drawing on her experience as a prosecutor, she anticipated these tactics. She began issuing subpoenas, leveraging the power of the district attorney's office to compel cooperation. This move was met with resistance, generating friction between the DA's office and the police department, a dynamic District Attorney Thompson was clearly uncomfortable with. He called Anya into his office, not to praise her tenacity, but to caution her. "Anya, you're making powerful enemies," he warned, his tone laced with apprehension. "Are you sure this is worth the political capital you're expending?" Anya stood firm. "Thompson, this isn't about politics. It's about justice. We have evidence of misconduct, potentially criminal behavior. My job is to follow that evidence wherever it leads." Her transformation from the woman quietly reading in the park to the determined prosecutor facing down institutional pressure was evident not in her words alone, but in her posture, her unwavering gaze, the steel in her voice. She wasn't asking for permission, she was stating her intention. The obstacles weren't just bureaucratic. Anya faced personal attacks aimed at discrediting her. Rumors began circulating, whispers about her being overly ambitious, about her having a personal vendetta against Officer Miller, even veiled suggestions that she was using her position for personal gain. These rumors, insidious and baseless, were clearly designed to undermine her credibility and isolate her. Anya refused to engage with the gossip, focusing instead on the facts of the case. She knew that responding would only give the rumors more power. Her resilience in the face of these attacks demonstrated her growing strength and commitment. A direct confrontation occurred when Anya sought to interview Officer Riley. His lawyer, a slick, aggressive man named Mr. Davies, blocked every attempt, citing various legal technicalities. When Anya finally managed to get Riley in for a compelled interview under subpoena, Davies was present, constantly interrupting and coaching his client. Riley himself was arrogant and evasive, denying any involvement in Jamal's arrest or any knowledge of Miller's alleged misconduct. He smirked when Anya showed him the video, claiming he couldn't be sure it was him and that the tattoo was common. This confrontation, though frustrating, was also revealing. Riley's defensiveness and the presence of a high-powered lawyer suggested he had something to hide and that the connections were real. It also solidified Anya's suspicion that Miller and Riley were indeed linked and possibly part of a larger issue. Her reaction wasn't one of defeat, but of renewed determination. She left the interview room not with less resolve, but with a clearer understanding of the forces arrayed against her. Through these confrontations and obstacles, Anya's transformation was evident in her actions. She wasn't seeking validation or engaging in lengthy internal monologues about her feelings. She was acting, issuing subpoenas, confronting resistance, enduring personal attacks and pushing forward despite the clear attempts to stop her. Her journey was being defined by her persistence and her refusal to yield, demonstrating a growing mastery of the complex and often dirty game of institutional power. The fight was no longer just about clearing her name or getting justice for a single incident. It was about exposing a deeper rot within the system. Este tópico ficou satisfatório? Gostaria de fazer algum ajuste ou podemos prosseguir para o próximo? Parte 8. Preparation for Climax. Aproximadamente 800 palavras. As the investigation into Miller and potentially Riley deepened, several secondary subplots began to resolve, converging towards the central conflict. The community outreach efforts led by Reverend Vance yielded a significant amount of anecdotal evidence, painting a consistent picture of Officer Miller's aggressive behavior and bias, particularly towards minority residents. While not always legally actionable on their own, these numerous accounts provided crucial context and demonstrated a pattern of misconduct that strengthened Anya's case and increased public pressure on the police department. This subplot concluded with Reverend Vance organizing a peaceful public demonstration, drawing media attention to the issue and making it harder for the department to simply bury the investigation. The internal pressure from District Attorney Thompson also reached a head. Facing increasing media scrutiny due to the community's activism and Anya's persistent use of subpoenas, Thompson realized that trying to suppress the investigation was becoming a bigger liability than pursuing it. He called Anya into his office again, this time with a different tone. "All right, Anya," he conceded, leaning back in his chair. "It seems this isn't going away. You have my full support. Just be careful how you handle the press." This marked a shift in his stance, resolving the internal conflict Anya faced regarding her boss's support. She now had the official backing of the DA's office, a critical advantage as she moved towards the climax. Mark Jenkins continued to be an invaluable ally. His discreet inquiries within the police department uncovered information about a specific internal affairs review of Miller from several years prior that had been abruptly closed without disciplinary action. The officer who had initiated that review had subsequently been transferred to a less desirable precinct. This suggested that Miller's connections might extend higher up the chain of command than initially thought, hinting at potential corruption or a culture of protecting certain officers. This information, while circumstantial, raised the stakes and pointed towards a more systemic issue. Mark's subplot resolved in his providing Anya with this crucial piece of background information, giving her a target beyond just Miller and Riley. With the community mobilized, the DA's office officially supportive, and a clearer picture of potential higher-level involvement emerging, the tension accelerated rapidly. Anya focused her efforts on building an undeniable case against Miller and Riley, preparing to present her findings to a grand jury. She meticulously organized the video evidence, the witness testimonies gathered by Reverend Vance, the details from Miller's disciplinary record, and the information about the previously suppressed IAB review. The pace quickened. Late nights in the office became the norm. Every piece of evidence was scrutinized, every legal strategy debated with Mark. There was no time for reflection or dwelling on past obstacles. The focus was entirely on the impending confrontation. The narrative shifted from investigation to preparation, the chapters building towards a single critical moment. Anya wasn't just collecting evidence, she was building a narrative, a compelling story of abuse of power and systemic failure that she would present to the grand jury. The emotional undercurrent was one of intense focus and controlled urgency, channeling her anger and frustration into meticulous preparation. The pieces were falling into place, not neatly, but with a sense of inevitability, all leading to the confrontation that would determine the fate of Officer Miller, potentially Officer Riley, and perhaps expose a deeper truth about the city's police force. Este tópico ficou satisfatório. Gostaria de fazer algum ajuste ou podemos prosseguir para o próximo? Parte 9. Climax. Aproximadamente 800 palavras. The grand jury hearing was the culmination of Anya's relentless pursuit. The air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation. Anya stood before the grand jurors, a diverse group of citizens, and began presenting her case. She started with the incident in the park, recounting Officer Miller's unwarranted aggression and discriminatory behavior. Her voice was clear and steady, conveying not just the facts, but the emotional impact of the experience. Then, she presented the video from Jamal's phone. The courtroom fell silent as the shaky footage played, Officer Miller's abusive language and the racial slur echoing through the speakers. The visual evidence was damning, leaving no room for doubt about his conduct during that arrest. Anya then called Jamal to testify, his voice trembling slightly but firm as he recounted the fear and humiliation he experienced. Next, Anya presented the pattern of complaints against Miller, highlighting how similar incidents had been dismissed or downplayed by IAB. She introduced the information about the suppressed internal review, suggesting a deliberate effort to protect the officer. She didn't make explicit accusations of widespread corruption, but she laid out the facts in a way that allowed the grand jury to draw their own conclusions about a potential systemic issue. The tension in the room was palpable. Officer Miller and his lawyer, Mr. Davies, were present, their faces grim. Officer Riley was also there, his expression unreadable. Anya knew this was her moment. This wasn't just about getting an indictment. It was about sending a message. The plausible twist came when Anya called a surprise witness, Sergeant Evans from IAB. Evans, looking uncomfortable but resolute, testified about the internal pressures he had faced to downplay Anya's complaint and the previous review of Miller. He admitted that he had been instructed by superiors to handle it quietly, and that there was a general reluctance within certain levels of the department to aggressively investigate complaints against well-connected officers. His testimony, coming from within the system itself, was a powerful indictment of the internal culture. This wasn't a dramatic, out-of-the-blue revelation, but a confirmation of the systemic issues Anya had suspected, adding a layer of institutional failure to Miller's individual misconduct. As Sergeant Evans spoke, Anya watched the reactions of Miller and Riley. Miller's face contorted with rage, glaring at Evans. Riley, however, remained stoic, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. It was clear that Evans's testimony had hit a nerve, confirming the existence of the protective network Anya had been warned about. In her closing statement, Anya didn't just focus on Miller's actions, she spoke about accountability, about the importance of trust between law enforcement and the community, and about the need to address systemic issues. She argued that indicting Miller wasn't just about punishing one officer, but about taking a necessary step towards restoring faith in the system. The grand jury deliberated for a relatively short time. When they returned, the foreman announced their decision. They had voted to indict Officer Miller on multiple charges, including assault and official misconduct. The courtroom remained silent for a moment, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. Anya felt a surge of relief and vindication, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this was just the first step. Miller would still have his day in court. However, the indictment was a significant victory, a clear signal that his behavior would not be tolerated. Officer Miller's face was a mask of disbelief and fury as the indictment was read. Officer Riley, for the first time, showed a flicker of concern in his eyes. Anya's transformation was complete in this moment. She had faced down intimidation, navigated complex obstacles, and used her skills and determination to achieve a significant victory against a seemingly protected individual and potentially expose a deeper issue within the system. This climax wasn't just about a legal outcome, it was about the protagonist's journey and her impact on the world around her. The indictment of Officer Miller sent shockwaves through the city. For Anya, it was a moment of hard-won triumph, but also the beginning of a new phase. The immediate aftermath was a flurry of legal activity and shifting dynamics. Miller, now formally charged, was suspended without pay pending the outcome of his trial. His lawyer, Mr. Davies, immediately launched a vigorous defense attempting to discredit Anya, Jamal, and even Sergeant Evans. The media attention intensified, with local news outlets covering the story extensively, framing it as a test of accountability for the police department. Within the police department, the atmosphere was tense. While some officers privately expressed relief that Miller was facing consequences, others, particularly those suspected of being part of his inner circle, became more guarded and resentful. The internal investigation into Officer Riley continued, albeit slowly. The department, under pressure from the DA's office and public opinion, issued statements promising transparency and cooperation, but the underlying friction remained. District Attorney Thompson, now fully invested in the case due to its high profile, assigned a team to work with Anya on the prosecution of Miller. While Anya remained the lead prosecutor, she now had resources and support that had been previously withheld. This allowed her to focus on building a strong case for trial, anticipating Miller's defense strategies. The internal conflict with her boss was resolved, replaced by a focused, albeit still politically sensitive, collaboration. Jamal, the young man whose video had been the turning point, became a reluctant public figure. While he was hailed as a hero by some in the community, he also faced intimidation and harassment. Anya and Reverend Vance worked together to ensure his safety and provide support, highlighting the personal risks individuals take when standing up for justice. This reinforced the community aspect of the story, showing the ongoing impact of the events. Sergeant Evans, the IAB officer who testified before the grand jury, also faced consequences. While he wasn't fired, he was effectively ostracized within the department, labeled a rat by some of his colleagues. His career prospects were likely limited, a stark reminder of the cost of speaking truth to power within a resistant institution. His subplot concluded with him becoming a quiet, internal ally for Anya, providing occasional discreet information when he could. Anya herself felt the weight of the impending trial. The threats, while less direct, hadn't entirely stopped. She increased her personal security and became more cautious in her daily life. The emotional toll of the past few months was evident, but her resolve remained unbroken. She knew that the indictment was just the first battle. The war for accountability was far from over. Her transformation continued, solidifying her reputation as a formidable and principled prosecutor, willing to take on difficult cases, even when they involved confronting powerful institutions. The falling action set the stage for the final resolution, demonstrating that while the immediate goal of indictment was achieved, the consequences and the fight for deeper change were still unfolding. Epilogo, aproximadamente 600 palabras. The trial of Officer Miller was a protracted and highly publicized affair. Anya, leading the prosecution, presented a compelling case, weaving together the video evidence, the testimony of Jamal and other community members, Miller's disciplinary history, and Sergeant Evans's testimony about the internal pressures within IAB. Mr. Davies mounted an aggressive defense, attempting to paint Miller as a dedicated officer, unfairly targeted by an ambitious prosecutor and a community with an anti-police agenda. He argued the video was taken out of context and that the complaints against Miller were unsubstantiated. However, the evidence was powerful, and Anya's presentation was effective. The jury, after several days of deliberation, found Officer Miller guilty of official misconduct and a lesser charge related to the assault on Jamal. He was acquitted of some of the more serious charges, a reminder of the challenges of prosecuting law enforcement, but the conviction was a significant victory. The revenge element, as requested, manifested not in a single dramatic act, but in the systematic dismantling of Miller's career and reputation and the broader consequences he faced. The conviction resulted in his immediate termination from the police force. The police union, which had initially supported him, distanced themselves after the verdict. The city faced multiple civil lawsuits filed by Jamal and other individuals who had come forward with complaints against Miller, leading to costly settlements that further tarnished his name and highlighted the department's failure to address his behavior earlier. Miller, stripped of his badge and facing financial ruin from legal fees and civil judgments, became a pariah, a cautionary tale within the department and the community. His life as he knew it was effectively destroyed by the consequences of his actions and the spotlight Anya had shone upon them. This was Anya's form of revenge, not personal vengeance, but ensuring that justice, with all its severe consequences, was served. The impact of Anya's actions extended far beyond Officer Miller. The public scrutiny generated by the case forced the police department to implement reforms, including revised procedures for handling civilian complaints and increased training on de-escalation and implicit bias. While systemic change is slow and challenging, the case initiated a necessary conversation and pushed the department towards greater accountability. Anya's career was irrevocably changed. She was recognized for her courage and skill, becoming a prominent figure in the fight for police reform and civil rights within the legal system. She continued her work as an assistant district attorney, taking on more complex and sensitive cases, always guided by her commitment to justice. Her relationship with Mark Jenkins evolved into a deep and lasting professional partnership. Reverend Vance and the community hailed her as a champion, a testament to the power of standing up against injustice. The park where the initial encounter took place became a symbol, not just of the incident, but of the change it sparked. Life in the city didn't magically become perfect, but the case of Officer Miller served as a powerful reminder that accountability was possible, and that the voices of those who had been marginalized could and would be heard. Anya's quiet afternoon of reading had inadvertently ignited a fire, leading to a form of justice and systemic pressure that resonated throughout the city. Her journey was one of resilience, determination, and ultimately, a profound impact on the pursuit of justice. Thank you for reading. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling stories. Let me know in the comments what city you're watching from and what you thought of Anya's journey.